everyone, I'm Bethany and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be making a regular sandwich bread loaf in my bread maker, and I'm going to be starting 2 loaves of sourdough. One of those loaves will have honey in it, so I will go through that with you guys and all of the steps that I follow, all the products that I use and everything like that. I realized that in my last baking video, I didn't really talk through my steps very much. So I'm gonna try to do better at that, and I'm gonna walk through some of the steps that I follow for each separate bread loaf. I'm still learning with both of these things, but these are my go-to bread recipes that I have been following. The sourdough really only for about a week now. This bread loaf for my, like a regular bread loaf in my bread maker for about a year now, a little over a year. So I will walk you through that. So I know for the regular bread loaf, I will need yeast. So I just have this Fleischmann's bread machine, instant yeast, the rapid rise one. And so this, I keep it in my refrigerator, but I just watched a video, Roots and Refuge, Jess over there, she puts hers in her freezer and just like uses it straight out of her freezer and it lasts forever. So I'm actually going to start doing that so it doesn't die. I do make a good amount of bread throughout the year, but not enough to go through all of this. So a new tip that I learned in one of her videos that I just watched. So I'm gonna be doing that. I have sugar, just organic cane sugar I got at Costco. And then I will be using the King Arthur bread flour, the unbleached bread flour for all of my bread. So I won't be putting sugar in my sourdough loaves. I will be putting sugar in my regular bread loaf, sandwich bread loaf that goes in my Panasonic bread maker. So I just follow the basic bread recipe. I have learned not to do the rapid recipe. The bread doesn't rise in time. I made bread maybe 2 weeks ago and I could smell it almost start. It smelled like a burning, but nothing was burning. And so I checked it, opened it, and half the loaf hadn't risen. So I just left it open. Let it rise for about 30-45 minutes. It got up to the size that I needed to, closed it. There is a setting on here that is just strictly a rise setting, and there is a setting on here that is strictly just a baking setting. So I just did the bake only setting for that one. On the side of this Panasonic, and I will give you a visual of this, it tells you, it lists everything that you can do. So you can make several different types of bread. You can even do sourdough in here, which I have not tried. You can do gluten-free. I do have stuff to make gluten-free bread. I have not tried it yet. I want to try that. That's more of a weekend thing. This is a Wednesday night. You can make pizza dough, gluten-free pizza dough. You can make pasta dough, gluten-free pasta dough, sourdough starter. You can make sourdough starter in this. Don't 100% know how much I trust that. This thing gets pretty hot. You can make cakes. You can bake only. You can make jam in this thing. Haven't tried that. I might try that this summer. And then you just have like kneading settings and the rise setting. So I am going to get this started and I will show you guys the recipe I follow. I'm also going to be using the Fairlife fat-free, ultra-filtered, lactose-free milk. It does call for milk powder. I have adapted mine to use liquid milk instead of milk powder. I just don't have milk powder on hand. At some point in the future, I'm sure I will purchase some to have on hand, but right now I just don't. We usually have milk on hand. That's what I use. Very simple ingredients. I'm about to get some butter out. I usually use the Tillamook butter. I also usually use the Redmond Real Salt for this recipe and for my sourdough loaves. I don't have any Redmond Real Salt in my house right now. I have regular salt. That's what we're gonna use. I'm gonna use what I have. I'm not gonna go spend a bunch of extra money on extra ingredients until I run out of these things. So that's what I'm gonna do now. And I will show y'all clips of my bread maker and all of the steps that I'm doing with this. So I'm gonna start with the bread machine because it takes about 4 to 4.5 hours. It is 5:30 right now. I wanna get it started. Then I will start with my sourdough loaves. I will probably start with those about 7 o'clock because you have to stretch and fold every 30 minutes for 2 hours. And so around 9:30 is when I want to be done. 9 or 9:30 is when I want to be done with that so that it can fully, what is the word I'm looking for? So that it can ferment, rest and rise. Don't know. I'll think of the word. I'll think of the word eventually. Anyway, overnight. Proof. So it'll proof overnight. And I just leave it on my counter. We have our heat on at night right now. It's still getting down to the 30s, but it's like almost 80 degrees during the day. Georgia is weird, but the AC vent kind of blows directly onto one part of my counter, and that's just where I've been letting my sourdough rise. I tried to do it in the oven with the oven door closed, not turned on. Did not work. Barely rose. So everybody's house is a little bit different. That's just what has been working for me. I will show you my starters. I have 2 separate starters right now. And then I'm also going to be making some chicken salad for our picnic tomorrow. We're going on a picnic tomorrow with my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law. I'm also going to be making chocolate covered strawberries. I have a few in my freezer right now. Probably shouldn't have frozen them because now the strawberries are frozen. It's fine, whatever. These will go in the fridge, not the freezer. Those in the freezer are for me, like a little treat, not a big deal. The ones I'm gonna make for tomorrow are gonna go in the refrigerator. What else am I gonna make? Bread, chicken salad, chocolate covered strawberries. If there's anything else that I'm making, probably dinner tonight, definitely. You will see that. So thanks for watching, and keep watching if you want to see how I make my bread and my chicken salad. I am using the recipe out of the Panasonic book that it came with, mostly because I'm not super confident in my bread making skills quite yet, so I haven't experimented a whole lot. I did make some adjustments for the milk. That's like the only thing I've experimented with at this point. And I am going to be doing the basic bread recipe that they have, and I'm gonna do a large loaf. I think I said medium earlier. I'm gonna do a large loaf. And I add all the ingredients in order of how they're listed, except for the milk. I add that with the wet ingredients at the end, and I still need to go get butter. For the large loaf, it calls for 3/4 of a teaspoon of the yeast. And I'm gonna make sure there's nothing in my bread maker. And it's locked in there. And then this measuring spoon cup thing came with the machine, so this is what I use, and there's markers on the side of each little cup. And so this says for a large loaf 3/4, and so I just I have 3/4, and I just sprinkle it around inside where it's kind of like evenly distributed on the bottom. You don't want it too close to the blade, because when the blade is mixing it up, it might miss some of that yeast. Put the lid back on that so I don't spill it. Next, it calls for the bread flour. And so this is in grams. I'm gonna tell you right now, weighing your flour is 1,000,000 times better than using a measuring cup or spoon. So let me get my scale. I got my scale. I'm in kind of like a tight quarter. I don't know why I always choose this little tiny corner to bake in, but that's just where I put my bread maker. I got my scale in a bowl. I'm pretty sure my dog just tried to eat asparagus. Bad boy, stop. No. Okay, this is calling for 500 grams of bread flour. No ringer. Weird. 500 grams. And now I'm just going to use the same cup, measuring cup, and distribute it evenly around the bottom of the bread maker, just until I can kind of get this mound of flour down. All of that is added. Next, it calls for the butter, and it calls for 2.5 tablespoons. So I'm gonna just cut. So 1, 2.5. The butter is marked in tablespoons, so that helps. And it doesn't say to do this necessarily, but I always kind of chunk mine up, like cut into chunks or slices, so that when it melts a little bit more even and doesn't leave like pools of butter. You could probably substitute this for olive oil or coconut oil, avocado oil, and I might try that one day, but maybe this weekend. I might try it this weekend. Kaysen's little brother and stepbrother are coming over, so I might make some bread for them to take home to my mother-in-law. I'm just cutting this butter up into those chunks. Who knows, maybe one day I won't do this and we'll just test it and see. I just have a feeling that if I left it in that big cube, it may not do what it's supposed to. Okay, next is sugar. And I do need to wipe my fingers off real quick. Watch out, Thomas. Sugar. It looks like we only need 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. So this is the tablespoon side. 1.5. Evenly distributed. The next ingredient is dry milk, but remember we're gonna skip that until the end or close to end. So salt is next, 1 3/4 teaspoons of salt. But normally I have salted butter, so I'm not gonna do 2 teaspoons of salt, but if it goes a little bit over, it goes a little bit over. It's not gonna be a huge deal. And I like to pour it over this because a little bit extra gets in there, it's completely fine. Next, we will do the milk. So my conversion says for dry milk, 2.5 tablespoons of dry milk. So 2 tablespoons of dry milk equals 1/2 cup. So for a large loaf, I will need at least 1/2 cup. Have that as a 1/4. So it says 5/8 of a cup of milk. Y'all, I'm not good at math. I'm gonna measure 1/2 cup. Oh, and then 1/8 of a cup. That's why. See, look, my brain's working. 1/2 cup of milk, which would be 4/8, 5/8. So I'm gonna get my big, my big cup. I don't know if we have that much milk. So I'm definitely gonna at least do 1/2 cup because I know that measurement and I have it on my thing. Okay, I don't have 1/2 cup of milk. We're gonna use almond milk. We're gonna use I think that's gonna be good. And I just pour it in. Let me add the water. So we still have to add water. And it says 330 milliliters of water. So let me get my cup back. And I'm gonna get my filtered water. So I use filtered water for my sourdough starter. We're gonna change the unit. Okay, pour all of this in there. It's probably good enough. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I think because I added a little extra milk because I didn't have that exact measurement. Let me move a few things out of the way. I will need my scale and the salt and the bread flour for my sourdough, but I'm not gonna do that for at least another hour and 15 minutes because I just don't really need to do it right this second. So I'm gonna plug this up and I'm going to choose, I'm gonna close this. The basic bread, this one says it is the basic white bread, and I'm going to choose how dark I want it. I'm gonna choose it on the darker side, and then, yep, 4 hours and 5 minutes.
be sorry, be smart. That angry screeching was the...
Okay, so this bread did not turn out. And honestly, it's like hit or miss with this bread maker sometimes. And the recipe, it's super weird, but the blade is still in the middle, so I'll have to get that out in the morning. So this did not turn out, but I did my last stretch and fold and they look good. So I will bake those in the morning and then show you guys that.